Activated.
Analyzing.
Update complete.
What's up, lore masters? Because I find nothing more amusing than seeing BattleTech fanboys talk about how the most obscure mythos of the lore is just so obvious, I decided to start a BattleTech lore series. Also, special note, in this I'm going to talk about the genesis of the BattleMech and its history. I'll name events and organizations that I'm not going to flesh out, so if you're wondering what they are, don't worry, I'm going to be talking about them in a later video. So let's just get into it. The BattleMech is arguably the greatest innovation in the BattleTech universe. Probably where they get the BattleTech name from. Just saying. Known simply as Mech for short, these armored vehicles stand anywhere from 8 to 15 meters tall and their weight can range from about 20 tons to 100 tons. Some can even go over 100 tons, but this is widely considered not to be feasible. This being due to the limitations of the technology available. The original creation of the BattleMech was meant more for operations on planets with an atmosphere, but as time progressed, they would also be able to be used in water, space, and other hazardous environments. Though it is worth noting that depending on the environment, the risk to the pilot would be substantially increased. Which makes sense, I mean, fighting on a beach has different limitations than fighting in an active volcano. Most mechs are, in some fashion, created in man's image. This means that their combat and ability when fighting other hostiles, including other BattleMechs, will mimic the abilities of humans. It's not uncommon to see two mechs utilizing weapons, melee attacks, and acrobatics to gain an advantage. Some mechs can even do handstands, because that's definitely needed in combat. The introduction of the BattleMech drastically changed the way war was waged in the BattleTech universe, and would irrevocably change human history in the eras to come. In almost every way, the BattleMech is superior to any other vehicle that can be fielded. The only limitation would be how much a government or an individual can afford. Owning a BattleMech is not exactly the cheapest thing in the universe. Before I continue, I've already stated, but I'm going to be referencing some things that I'm going to address in future videos. So, and again, I know this is redundant, but if I say don't worry, we'll touch on it later, get used to it and don't get too upset. This lore is annoyingly intricate and interwoven in itself. The history of the BattleMech begins with the Terran hegemony.
Hegemony. Hegemony.
A government we'll be getting into in the coming weeks. The Terran hegemony had begun top-secret research into utilizing advanced machinery to fight their enemies. Known as Operation Musclebound, the research occurred at the University of Zimbabwe. I guess you could say that the Terran hegemony found a way. Am I right? Ultimately, the scientists would be able to refine Myanmar technology. Again, something we'll have to talk about later, but for a quick synopsis, Myanmar fibers are an artificial biological muscle that have great strength-to-weight ratio. Effectively, they allow machines to carry more weapons and armor than counterparts that don't use the fibers. There's a lot that goes into it, and again, I'll break it down later, but just know this is magic tech. And of course, magic tech can tech, which allows for the creation of BattleMech so you and I can play games. The technological advancements of Myanmar technology and the ability to create mechs would stay a secret until the reign of Lady Margaret Cameron. I attempted to determine the exact year that Lady Cameron came out with the technology, but it would seem that that's a secret lost to the ages. However, Lady Cameron didn't actually showcase BattleMechs. Instead, she showed work mechs, effectively mechs that had a commercial use. Because when I think BattleTech, I think building of infrastructure and continuing prosperous society, so it's good that that piece of lore exists. As with most everything, the use of mechs was not kept to the commercial sector, as the Terran military worked tirelessly to research and develop war variants and effectively create the BattleMech. The first use of a BattleMech was during the Age of War, and yeah, I'll get into that Age of War later, so just chill, we'll get into it, don't worry. But on February 3rd, 2439, Colonel Charles Kincaid faced off against a Lance, and a Lance is 4 vehicles for those who are curious, of remotely operated heavy tanks in a battle trial. The Mech, whose class is lovingly called the Mackie, utterly destroyed the tanks without taking any damage. It was a resounding success. But even with this success, the BattleMech was kept a secret and wasn't used for many years afterwards. The first time the BattleMech saw actual combat was in 2443 when a lance of Mackies would attack a Draconis Combined Heavy Army Company on Stike, or Stike in the Latin. And of course, we'll talk about the Draconis Combined later. Only a single tank survived that encounter. To give a sense of scope, a company generally consists of 3 lances, or 12 vehicles, with some auxiliary lances that include scouts, armor, and artillery. So the Mackies destroying an entire company is not an insignificant force that they routed. Needless to say, the major powers and enemies of the Terran hegemony would make all attempts to gain this technology. The BattleMech gave a decidedly huge advantage to the Terrans. While the hegemony would keep the plan of the BattleMech secret for many years, ultimately all of the major powers would have the plans by at least 2466. Or that's at least as far as I can tell. Again, I've been doing research, but there are so many books. So if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments below. The Age of War would come to an end with the formation of the Star League, which is honestly what I was going to try to start out with doing lore, but God help me, I have to do all of this before I can even get to the Star League. Jesus Christ, I'm pretty sure the writers of the BattleMech also wrote Doctor Who. Welcome back. The Star League would take BattleMech design to the next level. Really, it would be a renaissance for all intents and purposes of BattleMechs. It would allow for the land-air mech, a unique fighting machine which could transform from mech to fighter, the Stinger LAM, and more. Unfortunately, this renaissance wouldn't last as the Star League would be plunged into civil war. At that point, 80% or more of the Star League Defense Force would leave with the best technologies and mechs for parts unknown. This would be followed by the succession wars of the former Star League, what would be known as the Inner Sphere. The succession wars would show a deterioration of all the advancements that had been made. Oh yeah, and while we're here, talking about the Mad Cat, I never meant to say that the clans went through the succession war. The Mad Cat was designed by the clans, and was designed during those wars. That's all I was trying to say. I apologize that I phrased it incorrectly, but back to the history of the BattleMechs. The regression of technology and knowledge after the fall of the Star League within the Inner Sphere would be so great that a lot of the technology would be known as lost tech, basically lost technologies. In fact, the technology and equipment would deteriorate so much that during the succession wars, mechs became much rarer and highly prized, passed from generation to generation. In some instances, mechs were built by automated factories that couldn't be maintained because no one knew how to fix them, or repair them, or keep them up. In fact, entire planetary invasions were based on gaining these factories. It's possible the extinction of the BattleMech would have occurred wholesale at this point, or at least for the Inner Sphere, if not for the discovery, or should I say rediscovery, of the Helm Memory Core in 3028. Now, those within the Inner Sphere would understand how to rebuild and even enhance BattleMechs after this discovery. Production lines would be rebuilt, new mechs would be designed and then created, and mech production would ultimately begin to outpace the losses of said mechs. For context though, BattleMech technology had not been regressing everywhere. The Inner Sphere would have a wake-up call when the invasion of the clans occurred in 3050. The clan invasions effectively was the old Star League Defense Force returning. The Star League Defense Force would have split into clans that would not go through the regression seen in the Inner Sphere. In fact, while BattleMechs would become archaic in the Inner Sphere, the clans would have enhanced the original designs even beyond what the Star League had built. The clans would have variant mechs known as omni mechs, which would be more potent than the Inner Sphere counterparts. In a way, it's basically a second renaissance for the BattleMechs as the clans in Inner Sphere battled and innovation was once again spurred. Now, taking a look at how a BattleMech is made, the construction of a BattleMech generally has them built around an internal structure that resembles a skeleton. Most BattleMechs resemble the human form to one extent or another, which does allow them to do amazing feats which have come in handy in battle and allow versatility. The musculature of mechs is the Myomur technology that we discussed before, combined with a large gyroscope system that provides stability and bipedal movement. Additionally, even some mechs are outfitted with jump jets, allowing them to launch into the air. Pilots of BattleMechs are known as, wait for it, Mech Warriors. Mech Warriors are seated in a cockpit and connect to the mech itself through a neurohelmet which reads their brainwaves. This would allow the pilot and the mech to become one in a way, and thus providing balance and necessary function. The pilot would utilize the neurohelmet and additional controls for combat operations. During this time, the pilot would be assisted by a diagnostic interpretation computer, so basically a DEEC. Which would take information gathered by sensors and other systems and allow the pilot to understand it in a way that makes sense. Mechs additionally would have a life support system and room for a passenger. Well, at least some mechs would. The mech itself would be able to seal completely against other environments, though special exceptions such as a drone mech also existed. So don't fight an active volcano? in a drone mech. In order to power something as massive as a BattleMech, a fusion engine was mounted into the torso, which of course is a very safe thing to do, as we all know. Heat would constantly be an issue for the BattleMech, and while the creation and use of heat sinks would help to dissipate these issues, often a mech would overheat. This would damage both the mech and the pilot, and sometimes cause it to shut down. In my case, all the time it caused it to shut down. I never could not keep a mech from shutting down. I suck at MechWarrior games. BattleMechs are known to carry drastically different types of weapons, including ballistic weapons, which could be autocannons, Gauss rifles, and machine guns. They also had energy weapons, which include lasers, particle projection cannons, so basically PPCs are the game enders, and flamers. Wait, flamers are considered energy weapons? What the hell? It could also carry missile weapons, which included long-range and short-range missiles. A mech's primary defense would be the skill of the pilot and the armor plating, which was designed to safeguard vital systems. Additionally, all mechs incorporated electronic warfare systems to lock on and make it harder to be hit. Also, something interesting that I didn't know is that mechs would also be painted with specialized paint that is meant to absorb electromagnetic radiation, making them harder to hit. Now, I've given a lot of information, and I'm going to briefly name the different chassis types, but won't be breaking them down until I get into individual mechs specifically. But among the chassis that exist include bipedal, tripodal, quadrupedal, which tripodal and quadrupedal are another term for useless in my opinion, land-to-air, and quad V. There would be 6 different classifications of mech, including ultralight, effectively a mech that is about 10 to 15 tons, light, a mech ranging from 20 to 35 tons, medium mechs weighing between 40 and 55 tons, heavy mechs that weigh between 60 and 75 tons, assault, the heaviest of the regular mechs weighing in between 80 and 100 tons, and then the daddy mech, also known as the super heavy in Latin. These mechs would be over 100 tons, but as stated, would generally not be feasible and not be able to be used. While I glossed over classifications, because again I intend to go in depth later, I will take a moment to be a bit more nuanced with the variants of mechs. What I've discussed mostly before are the standard mechs, but we also have something called the omni mech. The Mad Cat is an example of an omni mech. Omni mechs were introduced by the clans and later adopted by the Inner Sphere successor states. They feature hardpoints with interchangeable weaponry. This would be versus the BattleMech with fixed configurations, everything I've talked about to date. Omni mechs were game changers and gave a huge advantage to the clans against the successor states. For a while. Wow, okay, so that's a lot of information. So what do you guys think? BattleTech lore takes a long time to parse through, and while it's fun, I do want your feedback. If this is something interesting and you're going to help me grow an audience for, I'll continue. If not, then I'll probably be on to other endeavors, so your reactions mean a lot. Let me know in the comments below. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. The Lore Reloaded relies on fans like you. If you'd like to see The Lore Reloaded go to the next level and stay on the air, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Lore Reloaded. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next Lore Reloaded.